Hi, and welcome back again to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. I'm totally going blank. Okay,
Host.
I'm your co-host Kolby.
I'm
this
your
is my
co-host Jeremy.
Jeremy, co-host Jessica, who's now like a veteran. This is her fourth episode.
My fourth
Episode.
Fourth and final?
No.
No.
Got you for a while. After Dinner Conversation is a series of short stories and podcasts to have discussions about all these stories to encourage... That's a lot of cat going on over there. To encourage deeper discussions about ethics and morality and the things that matter, so you're not just spewing out the same 3 lines that you saw on some TV show.
Or on Facebook.
Yeah, for sure, Facebook.
Where are we at?
We are at La Gattara Cat Cafe, which is why we've got cats going everywhere right now and freaking
Cat
out.
lounge.
It is a cat lounge, although they don't serve alcohol, but they do have cats. And they're all available for adoption, or you can pay $10 and come and just pet them, and that way you don't have to, have all of your stuff pushed off of countertops
Yeah.
at home. So it's like all the benefits of cat with no cat. Also, you can download these stories.
The cats?
Not the cats. You can download the stories. Man, you're really energetic for an early morning.
I know.
You can download all these stories on Amazon as well as
wherever you download
podcasts. Ebooks, and podcasts and YouTube. And by all means, if you're enjoying watching these, like and subscribe. It makes us feel good and helps us do this more. Okay, so our story for today is Lay On. Jessica, you've got the introduction for this one, I guess.
And who wrote it?
Lay On was written by Vera Burris. Vera Burris. And this story sets us in 1969. Our 2 main characters are Christopher, a musician, and his strung out girlfriend, Polly. And during, I think they're at they're on the street, and 3 women approach with a lot of money and give it to Christopher and tell him he will have fortune and be the king of music festivals and the envy of all who wronged you. And he asks, who do I have to kill first? And they say, you'll know. And then they go on, and Polly arranges a audition for Christopher at a local bar. When they go, the guy who runs the bar basically says, you can play, but only if the other performer is a no-show or can't go on. And then Christopher decides that must be the person he needs to kill, and so he pushes that person in front of I think a bus.
Something big that kills him immediately.
Kills him immediately. So he gets to play, and when he plays, everybody loves him, and he continues to get gigs and continues to do really, really well. During that, all the witches kind of look in and follow his progress, and you learn that the witches were kicked out of their coven, I guess. Witchdom. And they're trying to earn a place back in, and Christopher, they're hoping, will provide them the way of earning their place back in by being evil. We're not really sure what is the criteria of getting back in, but just making him do awful things. So they continue to watch him and say things like, what does a good man with power do? And other frightening lines like that. And then near the end, he's a big deal. I think, help me out, guys. What happens with Polly?
She leaves him, I think, because she's an addict or something.
Right. And he won't continue to support her because
he's got all these other girls on the side.
Oh, right. That's right. He's hooking up with a bunch. He's got groupies now.
Yeah. And then at the end, the witches come back and ask him if he's regretful, or
he gets put in jail.
He gets put in jail, and Polly is not, and she
calls the cops on him.
The cops on him, and the witches.
I feel like Jeremy's the only one who did the reading this week.
hey, I did the reading. I did the reading. It's more important about the witches, and then the witches, the queen of the witches, Hecate, which we love from Lady Macbeth. Macbeth. You can call it Macbeth. I call it Lady Macbeth. And Hecate comes back and lets the witches back into the coven because they have earned their evil place.
Okay, but then in the end they're like, we're gonna hang out and go to Woodstock or something.
Oh yes, they do. They go hang out and go to Woodstock
instead.
That's true.
I mean, who wouldn't if you could go to Woodstock?
I mean,
not the 1999 Woodstock.
The 1969.
The 1969 Woodstock. Yeah. Jessica, you have thoughts? Things you liked, didn't like? Enjoyed, didn't enjoy?
I very much enjoy a witch story. So anything with witches, I'm gonna read. I love a good witch story. I do wonder, so my feeling with just to take the witches' perspective for a moment there.
Okay.
So the witches get kicked out of this coven, and they got to find somebody in order to manipulate, to kind of, I guess, cause mayhem and bedlam and
undisclosed bedlam, I think. Yeah.
Undisclosed bedlam. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that following their kind of narrative, so they find this guy and they're trying to influence him, and then to get back into this coven, but then they hang out because they're having so much fun in 1969. I don't know. I feel like it was an awful easy win. I mean, I think
for the witches.
Yeah, it's
not hard to find a wrongdoer.
It's not hard to find a musician wrongdoer. Let's be clear.
And especially they bring up the Manson murders at the same time,
right?
Which presumably is a much bigger evil than whatever Christopher did.
Right.
And Hecate's like, did you guys do this? He did this on his own. Nobody had to help him.
Oh, that's
so
right.
why is this special?
Yeah.
Right.
But she still lets him in. I guess, in that millennial
here's a prize.
Participated.
Wait, did you just say that Charles Manson got a participation prize?
No,
they did.
No.
The witches did.
Christopher
okay. All right.
Or not
the witches in the story.
The witches in the story got a participation
also
prize
ran.
for Christopher.
Yeah.
Right.
The effort of Christopher. So I think that was a little,
simple for you.
Well, I don't know if it was simple. I would love to know I would love to know what you guys think about this idea of, what makes evil win. Right? If presuming that the witches are a stand-in in the story for
just evil, yeah.
Right. And
which is a little bit anti-witch.
What?
It is from the research that I did, from my knowledge of Wicca.
We should make this into a drinking game every time
right?
you say the research that I did.
Yeah.
That's not how Wiccans act, but it is a
Right.
modern look at witchcraft. Is the recent Wiccan movement, which started in the 60s.
Right.
So.
I think this is definitely more of
the Christian
witch.
view
Right.
of
it's like a
witches.
stand-in of evil. It's
yes.
It is like the Macbeth view
of witches. Yeah.
Actually, I thought it was like a Joker stand-in from the Heath Ledger Joker, where it's like, I just do chaos. Like, that's my job. Why? I don't know. It's just chaos. This is what I do.
Oh, interesting. So you didn't see the witches as evil, but the witches as chaos?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, obviously, a lot of their dialogue talks about their desire to sort of tempt the worst in us.
Yeah.
Right.
But it seems like generally they just wanted just bad things, like just craziness afoot. Like, there's a reason they're staying at Woodstock.
Yeah, okay.
Is to promote
just like whatever.
Heathenism.
Yeah, heathenism, yeah. But certainly...
Or hedonism, or...
I was going to say, like, hedonism. Yeah, I could see that. That's a really interesting take, Kolby. I didn't think about that. I did assume it was just evil, but the idea of it just being chaos or hedonism or, whatever, tempt the worst in us is an interesting...
What's the thing in movies where they have a sacred object that everyone has to get?
The MacGuffin.
MacGuffin. Yeah, I feel like the witches are a little bit like a MacGuffin and just like, we just need evil. Okay, we'll make witches.
They're just a metaphor.
But it could have been, like an evil vase. It could have been a magic 8-ball. It could have been...
Oh, okay.
They didn't act in a way that sort of was dynamically interactive.
No,
right.
They're just providing
access. Yeah, they're providing the catalyst to tempt this person to see what this person's really like.
Right. Here's cash, and you're going to know what to do to make the best of this situation.
And I think that is a little bit different than Macbeth, in that in Macbeth, the witches are much more... They're both the cause and the effect, depending on how you look at it. Like, they tell you your future, but the fact that they told you makes you now think that future is possible. And if they had never told you, would you have done it?
Well, and that is what they do to Christopher.
Yeah.
They tell him, you can have fame and fortune. You're going to know what to do to get there.
Right.
So one of the things I did wonder about this story was, did they do anything? or were they only encouragers? So they said, like, you're going to have to kill a person.
No, they didn't say that.
Well, no, they said...
They didn't.
They said, because he said, who do I have to kill?
Oh, that's
and they
right.
said, you'll know. And I think that's the intriguing part of it, just to, echo what you're saying, Kolby, is like, I'm not sure that they did anything. Like, there's no, like...
They were just enablers. They were
encouragers.
Let me hold your purse.
Let me hold your purse.
But here's the thing, like, the whole pushing the person, like, that may have worked out the same way with or without them, right? If he'd have pushed that person in front of the vehicle, witches or no witches, it might have gotten him the gig, right?
Well, and I think what I find interesting is the whole... So I don't know if anybody else read it this way, but so you're reading the story and the witches say, like, or he says, you know, who do I have to kill? And the witches say, you'll know. And like they walk into this bar and like his, you know, like the guy is going to be on stage, the first performer, I can't remember his name. And he's like, maybe I have to kill him. It's so quick. It's like,
it is super quick.
It's like, maybe I have to kill him. And I was like, so, you know, this idea of tempting the worst, like, I would like, I don't know, 1,000 signs before I push somebody in front of a bus. Not that I would
just
push
one.
somebody.
You need like a big neon arrow being like, this guy.
This is the way to your future.
Yeah, in case you're not sure.
Do you see the money sticking out of his pants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's your 1,000 signs.
Right. So pushing in front of the bus came really quick, but then I thought also like that might be just Christopher. Like Christopher is like, this. Okay, this is it. All right, I'll do this. And so that I would love to see a story that kind of plays with the, you know, if anybody out there wants to write for submissions.
Which we are always accepting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That wants to write a story. I would love to see something that tempts somebody in the same way, but then
it's not an easy tempt.
I would not say it's not an easy tempt. It's just like, what if had Christopher pushed that person in front of the bus and then it not paid out? So then they're like, oh.
So you just want like head fake witches?
Wait, well, no, but
you're like, oh, we didn't mean that guy. We meant the guy to his left.
Right, well.
Oh, you'd have to push another guy.
Right, you have to push another guy, or another guy, and right, like in this story, it's clear that this is like the string of chaos that they're looking for,
right?
And it works out for Christopher. But what if it's not working out? What if it's this tempt that doesn't work out, and then you just keep trying? Like, do you keep trying?
It's like a tragic comedy. Like, how many people do I have to kill? All of them.
Yeah, isn't that a Coen Brothers movie?
It could be. It
a
sounds like
plan.
A Coen Brothers movie. So one of the things I found really interesting about this story for me was the idea of, is Christopher bad in that he's done bad things, or is he bad and now he's been given opportunity? Like the three of us are sitting here. Like, are we secretly evil? We just haven't gotten
let's be clear. There's no secret.
Yeah.
I am evil.
Yeah. Okay, so in your case, but here's the thing: were you evil before you did anything, or because I feel like is evil in the action or is it in the mind? And even if the mind never gives choice to that action, does that still make you evil? Because there are certainly times when I'm driving a car and somebody cuts me off, and I'm like, oh, if I could get in that car with a baseball bat, I would take care of them right now. But luckily they drive away before I can pull up alongside them with a baseball bat.
You need a podcast when you drive.
Yeah,
clearly.
I need something. But. And so I do wonder if, there's that saying, like, if you want to know what somebody's made of, don't give them adversity, give them power, right? Because,
right.
Because I mean, there's a reason that kings and dictators become the worst people often, because they have the ability to be the worst people.
Well, that's an interesting question. And in particular in the story with Christopher, he's tempted. And he immediately throws somebody in front of the bus. But then when he gets power, right? When he ditches Polly, who was there to help him.
Sure.
So there's not even the redeeming quality there where he's at least, loyal.
No. I think once you've gone evil, I think he is entirely self-centered.
Yes.
And I don't even think it's about the music. It's about the power. It's about being loved, right? Yes. Being all of these things, being adored, being rich, and so you look, and I think this is a little bit relevant in the sort of situation we've been in the last couple of years. If you look at like R. Kelly, if you look at Bill Cosby, if you look at all these people who are sort of
empowered and entitled.
Yeah, they're empowered and entitled, and they're rich, and there are people who sort of fix the things that
go wrong.
That go wrong, and it happens again and again. That over a period of time, you think, well,
I can do anything.
I can do
I can kill somebody in the street, and
nobody would care.
And nobody would care. Why? Where'd you get that quote from? I wonder.
I don't know.
But that's exactly it, right? And so the question is, when you get that ability, I think there are more Christophers than we would like to think.
Yes.
And that the only thing that keeps people from doing these things, in not all cases, but in many cases, is just like, I'm not a bajillionaire, and I'm not worth $100 billion.
Right.
I'm not.
Or there's a process through growing up where you develop a strong moral character. And even those people can be tempted and can do wrong in doing things that they think are right. But if you don't have that strong moral character, or that hasn't been developed in you, I think we all fall back on
Lord
selfishness.
Of the Flies.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so walk me back just a little bit with that statement. So how does one develop a strong moral character?
And I'm going to follow up on
question.
something. How do you know that you have one until you're given power instead of adversity?
It's true. I don't know, personally.
As a person who doesn't have tons of power, yeah.
Right. Well, I think in a previous episode you talked about with your daughter,
right,
showing her, or that we should teach the consequences of what people are doing, the good and the bad of everybody.
Yes,
and you realize,
right, when we talk about history, like don't just sell a hero, sell the whole story of that hero, so they understand that everybody is a complicated.
Everybody's a complicated mess.
Even people that are known as good people are complicated.
Yes. Yeah. There are consequences to all the actions, everything you do. So understanding that, and there's good and bad in everything, I think helps develop the ability to choose a moral path.
So I'm following you. But one of the things I would have to say is that, especially with our heroes, there is lots of times when there are no consequences for the bad they did.
Particularly historically.
Especially historically.
Yeah.
Especially during, what we would now consider bad, slavery, that wasn't necessarily considered bad back then, at least not by the people that were doing it. And so there weren't consequences. So how do you teach consequences? How do you teach that moral barometer? When we do, there's lots of people now that are doing horrible things that have no consequences to it. R. Kelly still gets record contracts. Bill Cosby, is he in jail now?
But he's probably still selling records.
Probably still selling records. So there are, somebody once said, they didn't know me well, so they said they had a very strong moral barometer. But they said, how did you learn that? And they assumed that it was I was raised Catholic. I am not Catholic, but I was raised Catholic. And they wondered how my daughter would be raised to have a strong moral barometer without being raised with religion. And when we talk about
texting about this last night, this drives me nuts.
Yeah, I agree.
This idea that people think that that religion provides morals, and without religion you can't have morals.
Right.
Exactly. And I would argue just the opposite, and there's a little bit of a tangent. I would argue just the opposite, that if I'm not pulling the lever because I'm afraid I'm going to get shocked, that's not a moral. That's a fear. Right. So if I follow Christianity or whatever faith I believe in, because I am worried about someone watching and judging and scoring me, those are not morals. Those are fears. Those are fears of retribution.
Yes.
Moral is to me when you are like, look, nobody's ever going to know. It's the perfect crime. No one will ever know. But now.
But it's still wrong.
I'll know.
It's still.
It's wrong to me. And so it doesn't matter at all. To me, that's morality, right? And so I think obviously Christians can be moral, but if the reason for being moral is just
the fear of punishment,
that's not morality. That's not morality, which is why it drives me nuts that people like non-Christians or non-religious people can't be moral. I'm like, no, they can only be moral because they don't believe there is a punishment waiting for them except for their own self-identity and their disappointment in themselves and their choices.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a nice rant. Good job.
Thank you. I've been storing that one up for a while.
Just for this story.
It's part of the reason for these podcasts, right? Is the idea that that you can have these conversations about the ethics and morals of these characters and these things they're doing and their choices they're making, and it's about. And I think the way sometimes you develop those morals, one, you just inherit them from your parents until you can judge them, but also I think the issue of just you live life and you like, wow, I was treated that way and I don't like it.
Right.
And so now
and
when
I
I'm
treated other people this way, and now I have to deal with the consequences
right,
of that.
and now that I'm seeing it for the third time, I'm like, look, I'm not doing this because it is or isn't. I'm doing it because it's just not who I choose to be.
Right.
Because I know what it's like to be in that person, to be the kid that's taunted at the playground, or
Right.
to be the person who's
Or the kid that's excluded. Right?
excluded or fat shamed or teased about being LGBT or whatever the case may be. And I think the interesting thing about this story, see the way I tied that all together, is if you take someone who's in their, I assume the musician's late teens, early 20s, who's living on the street, who's drug addicted, or at least has a drug addicted girlfriend, and you say, here is everything.
Yeah.
I am terribly disappointed that he just goes in this spiral of like evil, but I am not the least bit surprised. And I think that he is the norm, not the exception.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I disagree. I'm a humanist at heart. So
Aww.
I know. So evil and still so humanist. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I think Christopher's spiral can be indicative of some people, and especially like we can talk forever about Christopher's situation and why he made the choices, and how those choices are not necessarily choices. You're living on the street, everything is horrible, and somebody says you can have all the money you want if you just do this one thing. It's really hard to say no to that when life is so terrible.
Particularly if you've never had the experiences and the sort of mentors to explain to you why this is the wrong choice.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think society explains to you why this is the wrong choice. It's not like Christopher pushed that kid in front of the bus and was like, oh, I'm sure everybody will be okay with this.
That's true. I mean, laws are the codification of sort of community morality.
But what, and I think we can extend this metaphor into larger, like this is why, crime is committed in terrible neighborhoods is because there is no way out unless we do this thing. What surprises me, I think, about Christopher's character, and what I would probably argue, is that there was no shame spiral. There was no...
he doesn't die realizing, like, oh...
Well, right. Well, we don't really get Christopher's perspective.
That's true.
We get the witch's perspective.
Right.
And what I will say is, like, I think it would be... I would have, I think more people are apt to push the person in front of the bus to get out of a terrible situation and then feel shame, regret, and not just fear, but like just terrible sadness, but also try to receive redemption in other ways. And I think that's why the witches get back into the coven is because Christopher didn't go that route. He didn't have the okay, I'm now in a place of power where I have solved my issues and I can be a better person, right? We see...
I can lay off the horrible because now I can eat.
Right, now I can eat. Now my Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of being a okay human being is taken care of, so now I can work on self-enlightenment.
So do you sort of put these into two tiers of sort of issue, right? Like one is the I need... and so I have to steal or do whatever, versus I live without fear, and so I do as I choose.
Right.
Yes,
so
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And like we see a little bit of Christopher's character in the very beginning where he's trying to get enough money for Polly to get a fix.
Yeah.
This is not just him feeding himself. This is him taking care of someone else.
You ready to have your mind blown? I'm about to blow your mind.
Blow my mind.
What if they're actually the same? In that, in the beginning, for Christopher, in the beginning, the issues are, I'm hungry, I'm whatever, I want people to like me. But the real issue is I don't like myself, right?
Sure.
I don't feel loved. I have a hole in me that I can't fill.
Correct.
Once that is in him, whether you've got a little bit of money or a lot of money or a couple of groupies or a lot of groupies or a couple people asleep with you or 100 people asleep with you, that hole never gets filled. That's the sort of Maslow's pyramid where yes, you've got food and shelter, but what you don't have is a sense of like love, emotional
belonging.
support and love and all those
Yeah.
things, right? Like, you want to talk about a list of people that are not ever going to get married? Rock stars. Because that hole is still not filled in the way it can be. And so he's continuing to try and meet his sort of pyramid of needs, but he doesn't understand that money and groupies is not the thing that sort of fills the last spot in the pyramid.
Yeah, I
Boom.
think.
But again, does that come down
It
to
did not blow my mind.
choice?
Did it blow your
where-
mind?
Sorry.
That comes down to a choice where what would fill the hole is enlightenment
Yoga.
and becoming a good
Right,
person
Sting.
at that point.
So here's one that I'm always amazed by. I'm broad brushstroking this, right? But so Harrison Ford is a carpenter, and gets picked up for like a couple of movies and Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all these things. Then he becomes, at one point he was starred in like 7 of the 10 highest grossing movies at one point in like 1989 or something.
Sure.
And what does he do? He like marries Callista Flockhart or whatever her name is,
Callista
and goes
Flockhart.
to a ranch in Wyoming where he just like lives,
Yeah.
right? And that's it. And he does a few movies once in a while that are pretty mediocre, but he just he's full,
Sure.
right? As that to me is like, that's our person who could have been Christopher,
Oh, okay.
because I mean he's literally Han Solo. Like, that guy is not hurting for lady friends or
Correct.
money or jobs or anything.
Correct.
And he's like, no, I'm perfectly happy, like
Okay.
learning to fly a Cessna, living in Wyoming, and like, doing cowboy stuff. That to me is what you wish Christopher were, right? Like a person, maybe that they don't have to remove themselves from society, but that they understood that like I am enough,
Right.
without the fact that I'm Han Solo or I'm
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're correct in that that Christopher has a need greater than Maslow's pyramid, and that is what makes him continue to be such a jerk for the rest of the story.
Right. He never has
Right.
enough. He never
No,
has enough
no.
where he's like, maybe I should like go to a
And
cancer shelter dressed up as Iron Man or
And
whatever.
is this why they chose him?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Oh, that's an
Now I
interesting
get it.
question.
Now I get it. Yes. Yeah, that is, and that's why,
That's a
and
really
that's
good
why
point.
he gets back. That's why they get back in, is because they can pick out that. I would like to
And enable the...
yes, yeah,
The worst in a person who's unable to fill that worst.
yes,
Yeah.
or prevent them from finding the people that would fill that.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap this up with one last question I'm going to give to you, Jeremy, since you've been a little bit quieter on this one. Do you think the witches are evil? Or do you think, is the person who sort of hands you the machete evil? Or is it just a machete and you're the one who chooses to make it a tool?
Morally ambiguous, for sure. It depends, again, what are their goals? Is it really to foster evil? Then yeah, I would say that they are evil in that goal.
All right.
It isn't just a machete. It's,
Well,
let me hold your purse, here's a machete.
Yeah, and here's the reason I bring it up, is particularly in the climate we have right now, there are some who would argue that words are the equivalent of handing someone a machete.
Yeah.
By telling someone it's okay to hate, it's okay to dislike, it's okay to be xenophobic, it's okay to, that you're
enabling
you're
the worst in
metaphorically
people.
putting that machete in many
Yeah.
people's hands, and some of them may choose never to swing that machete, but you're at the very least giving them the green light to have the machete.
Exactly. You know who.
Yeah.
Who do I have to kill? You'll know.
You'll know, right? Who do I have to
and-
hate? You'll know.
And it's really in that statement they're enabling him to be his worst.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the witches are maybe just a little bit different than the idea of words or the machete, in that I think if
They're a little more encouraging.
Well, what I would say is like the witches are enabling one person. I think if we wanted to see a truer, at least a truer metaphor, if the witches were making it normal that we push people in front of buses, that is the words in our society. Being able to say like, yes, these words are terrible, but also we're not going to judge you if you use them. We're not going to judge you if you push people in front of buses.
Yeah.
Go for it. That is, I think, where the metaphor becomes more parallel.
Yeah, that's fair. You have been listening to After Dinner Conversation with myself, Kolby, and Jeremy and Jessica. We were talking about Lay On. If you enjoyed this story and haven't read it yet, you can get it on Amazon as an ebook. You can go to the website, afterdinnerconversation.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like or subscribe. It'll make us happy and be able to do more of these. Also, once again, we are at La Gattara, where they have cats available for adoption for like $20, $30 or whatever. Or you can just pay $10 and come and hang out with cats. And they have Wi-Fi. And like, why buy a $10 espresso so you can use their Wi-Fi when you could perfectly well hang out with cats and use their Wi-Fi? And there are cats.
Bring your own espresso. You make it the way you like it.
You make
anyway.
it the whatever. And if you have a story idea like this in your head, you've got your narrative version of the trolley problem, then email it in to us from our website, afterdinnerconversation.com, and we will take a look at it. And if it's good enough, yours will be one of the ones that we discuss here. Thank you.